Good afternoon. My name is Ian Weston, the Executive Director of the American Trauma Society, and I'd like to thank you all very much for joining us and allowing us the opportunity to introduce the Trauma Survivors Network. On the phone today, we have Peter Thomas, Chair of the American Trauma Society's Trauma Survivors Network Committee, Clay Hamrick, a trauma survivor who has been a participant in the TSN, and Liz Wasaki, the ATS TSN coordinator, who will all provide some insight about important aspects of the program. We will allow for questions at the end of today's webinar. Please feel free to write them in the question box or click the button on your control panel to raise your hand, and we will activate the line later on. I'd like to now turn it over to Peter Thomas for a brief introduction and welcome.
Thank you very much, Ian. I'm so glad that everyone could join us today, and the attendance being as high as it is, it's clear that there is not only a need across the country for the Trauma Survivors Network, but I think people are really recognizing its value. I wanted to just say I'm a board member of the American Trauma Society, and I really was asked pretty much to become involved in the ATS as a result of my own personal experience with trauma. We're also going to hear in a moment from Clay Hamrick, another trauma survivor. Several years ago, back in 1974, actually, I was involved in a car accident and lost both my legs below the knees. I was 10 years old at the time, and I was in Canada. And it turned out that a gentleman by the name of Dick Streeter, who I had no idea who he was, read about this horrific accident in the newspaper and wound up driving 300 miles to come see me. He wound up coming to the ICU where I was several days after my accident, and asked my parents if he could see me and talk with me, and explained the situation, and they said yes. He came in and he explained that he had a wife and children and a job, and he was a very happy person, and wound up ultimately dropping his drawers and jumping out of 2 artificial legs and landing on the bed next to me, and basically said to me that, you know, life is not over. You can do this too. You know, keep your chin up and be focused on rehabilitation and getting better, and you're going to be just fine. And I got to tell you that peer-to-peer support, that I'll call it now, I certainly didn't call it that then, but that kind of peer-to-peer support was just absolutely critical for me. It really did turn my life around. It opened my eyes to the possibilities and the opportunities that I had, and what I had left rather than what I had lost. And that really inspired me to be involved in the Trauma Survivors Network, and I think that's really at the root of what the value of this program is all about. So I'm very, very pleased to be involved in the project, and really exceptionally pleased that so many other people on the phone today are listening to this call to try to learn more about the TSN and to try to implement it in trauma centers across the country. Hopefully also reaching out to rehabilitation hospitals and centers to try to bring them in as well. The beautiful thing about the TSN is that it's modular. You can do as much as you can do. You can start incrementally and build from there. But ultimately, we think it's a dynamite program. It's something that has been funded by the CDC, the Centers for Disease Control, and it's well developed. It's a well-developed program, and we've had a lot of very positive feedback from trauma centers across the country. And we're very hopeful that you will take this opportunity to not only learn more about the Trauma Survivors Network today, but then, of course, take it and implement it in your own community, in your own trauma center, in your own hospital, and do all you can to build a peer network, much like the network. Essentially, it wasn't a network at that point, but much like the experience that I had. Try to replicate that across the country. It really can pay huge dividends in a variety of different ways. So thank you so much for joining the call. And let me pass it to Clay Hamrick, a fellow trauma survivor.
Thank you very much, Peter. I would echo everything Peter said on the call. Again, my name is Clay Hamrick. I am a trauma survivor. I am out of Northern Virginia. And many months ago, I was working on a roof. I fell 28 feet and landed on a deck I broke L1 and C7 vertebrae, suffered a massive concussion, had a massive hematoma from my thigh to the middle of my back, and I was taken by ground ambulance to the nearest level 1 trauma center as a code. I spent 14 days in the hospital and was released for home physical therapy. I was in a brace from my waist up to the top of my head for 4 months. And at the end of all of that, I am about 90% physically recovered. After a year of recovery, I was released by the trauma team at the level 1 trauma center that I was at, and basically given as clean a bill of health as they could give me. I had healed physically as much as I could possibly heal. At that point, I thought that was fantastic news. However, about 2 weeks after I was released by the trauma team, I began to experience nightmares. I have been diagnosed with some PTSD, and it caught me totally off guard. And maybe this is something that, Peter, you've experienced as well. But once the physical healing was over, I discovered, much to my, well, I'll say it, terror, that I was in a place I'd never been before. I was in a place where I didn't understand what it was. I didn't understand how to deal with it. And I didn't understand how to move forward, even though I was 90% physically healed. It caught me completely off guard. I had been released to drive by the trauma team. I had gone back to work. I was physically at work, but I wasn't doing well there at all. And I just did not know where to go. My friends, my family could not help me at all. They didn't understand any of this. And I didn't know what else to do other than to go back to where it all started, my level 1 trauma center. So I called them up, explained what was going on, and they said, oh, yes, we have this group called TSN. I had no idea what TSN was. I didn't even know what the letters stood for. And I'm here to tell you that TSN absolutely, positively turned my life around completely. I began to go to some of the TSN meetings. I have since become a peer visitor with TSN, and it has totally transformed my life. It allowed me to move on. It allowed me to heal, and it allowed me to deal with that place that I've since learned they call the new normal. When I was released from the trauma team and declared physically fit, I didn't realize that that was only the beginning. And I had no idea that trauma goes on and on for the rest of one's life. I had no idea that trauma impacts the trauma survivor's family, their friends, their coworkers. And TSN has not only allowed myself to deal with all this, but my family to deal with it as well. Peter alluded to the fact that it's modular, and it indeed is. If possible, you can use it to aid the trauma survivors, but it also has modules to care for the caregivers, to care for peers, and to go out into the community and care for the first responders, the doctors, the nurses, the social workers, the psychologists, all of whom touch trauma on a daily basis. I cannot imagine being able to go through life without TSN. And I am deeply grateful. I'll be grateful for the rest of my life. My friends, my family have me back now. And I'll never say I'm good to go, but I'm in a way better place now due to TSN than I was when I was released from the trauma team. So I really appreciate everybody being on, and I'll turn it back over to Ian.
Thank you very much, Clay. It's a truly heartwarming and eye-opening story. I want to transition now to talking about the meat of today's call, the TSN. There are approximately 1.5 million survivors of serious traumatic injury every year, and traumatic injuries can produce a number of devastating results, the most common of which are orthopedic, spinal cord, and traumatic brain injuries. For each individual victim of trauma, there are many family members and loved ones who also experience sudden life-altering situations. To provide effective assistance to the trauma survivor, these family members must be truly supported and prepared for the journey of recovery. Over the past 50 years, the care of trauma patients has been revolutionized by improvements in surgery and the growth of comprehensive trauma systems. These advances have resulted in dramatic reductions in trauma-related mortality and morbidity. However, despite this, long-term outcomes for many trauma patients are still not optimal. Research has found that poor outcomes are not solely related to the physical injury, rather they are also tied to the emotional responses to trauma and the lack of support to patients and families. There is growing recognition that more involvement of the patient and their family in the treatment process is essential to improved outcomes. Providing such integrated patient-centered care and support is no small task. Each year, given the number of people discharged from an acute care hospital for treatment of a moderate to severe traumatic injury, it has been difficult for trauma centers to deliver extensive psychosocial support services due to the expense involved. The Trauma Survivors Network was developed by the American Trauma Society to help trauma centers, hospitals, and their associated rehabilitation units to increase involvement of their patients and families in their own care by providing the support and services patients and their families need. The program provides hospitals mechanisms to help their patients build self-efficacy and self-management skills, provide timely access to information for patients and families to assist them in managing their recovery, as well as online tools that promote the sharing of experience and the hope among patients and families. In the fall of 2003, Scott Shields, a trauma survivor, met with then ATS Executive Director Harry Teeter to discuss the needs of trauma survivors. He stressed the severe displeasure with the lack of support for trauma patients during their recovery and believed the concept like the TSN would make a significant mark on the post-trauma recovery process. Joining them was Peter Thomas, who we heard from earlier, an attorney in Washington who recently survived a car crash, which resulted in a double leg amputation. Their stories and efforts to support survivors and each other sow the seeds of the TSN and the critical needs it should address, linking survivors to survivors. Scott and Peter were able to connect and inspire each other to get their lives back on track. With the receipt of external grant funding, the ATS began formal research and development of the TSN concept. The ATS collected both hard data and anecdotal evidence to prove the need for a survivors program after seeing the value of Scott and Peter's relationship. In 2008, with data in hand, the ATS began to market this concept at national conferences and to interested facilities. The concept grew to a pilot, which was launched later that year. Since then, ATS has further analyzed and developed the TSN program. We have worked with our National Advisory Council, the TSN Committee, health providers, and survivors to grow the program to where it is today. The network relies on a team effort to support trauma patient recovery. It involves the work of trauma centers, the support of friends and family, and the willingness of the survivor to engage others for assistance. The program actively engages each of these consumers on many levels. The TSN empowers a new trauma patient and their family by providing timely information and support, thereby improving their capacity to communicate effectively with treating medical staff and to be involved in decisions about their own care. The TSN provides self-management training and support groups that help patients and families engage more fully in treatment and achieve maximum recovery. Recruits and trainers recovering trauma patients as peer visitors, moving them from the role of the patient to that of the peer educator and mentor, and increasing public knowledge about trauma and advocates for patient and family-centered trauma care. These components are designed to be synergistic. Because trauma strikes quickly without warning, families of trauma victims are in shock and overwhelmed when they hear the news that a loved one has been critically injured. How is this news handled, and to what degree to which immediate care and support are extended to the patient and their family is critical to how they will cope with their lives thereafter. These key components and activities are the foundation for the TSN program. Having a mechanism for patients and families to connect with other survivors to share support and information about their injury, providing opportunities for hospital-based programs during the recovery process, like peer visitor and peer support, and most importantly, ensuring there is a community of advocates that are focused primarily on positive outcomes of the trauma patients and the systems that care for them. I'd like to now turn it over to Liz Wasaki, our TSN coordinator, to discuss major components and the benefits of the TSN.
Thanks, Ian. Hi, everyone. I'm Liz Wysocki. I am proud to be here today. I've been a part of the TSN since 2009. When Ian was talking about that pilot site, I was the coordinator at the pilot site, which was at the Shock Trauma Center in the University of Maryland Medical Center. And it's just been an amazing experience to be a part of a program like this that provides a space for people to heal after trauma. I now work with the American Trauma Society and Johns Hopkins University to support trauma centers that want to have programs that support survivors. And because I've ran a lot of these programs, I can help you decide how you can start to meet these needs and reach these people and give them an opportunity to heal together and then to heal out, as Clay was alluding to others, to family members, to providers. I'm going to go over the major components of the Trauma Survivors Network. It's going to be an overview, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about implementation and the resources that are available to each of you as you're moving forward. As you know, the TSN is one of the American Trauma Society programs, and I'm a national coordinator along with Harry Teeter. We work together to promote the TSN and to support trauma centers. We support local coordinators in their efforts to promote the TSN. Local coordinators can include one person, but they can also be a team of people who are working together to achieve these goals. I'm going to start, if you look on the slide all the way to the left, for the programs for survivors. So we have programs that we can provide you lots of manuals and implementation and experience in implementing that connect survivors with other people. So the first one is peer visitation, and Clay was telling you about it, and Peter was also describing peer visitation. We take survivors, train them to meet with newly injured trauma patients during that very difficult time of being in the trauma center. This person can serve as a positive role model, can provide hope, which Peter and Clay have really described better than I could ever put into words. We also have peer support groups and family classes that we can help you get up and running if you're interested. The peer support groups, you may have already had experience, right? So there's brain injury support groups, you may find spinal cord injury support groups, amputee. But if you're a person who survived trauma and you didn't fit into one of those categories, many times you didn't have somewhere to go to talk to people who had experienced what you had experienced. And as Clay talked about earlier, can help you with this new normal and navigating life as a survivor. We also offer family classes, and family classes address the needs of the family members who are also overwhelmed by this experience and are dealing with so many different emotions: guilt, anger, fear, and then the responsibility that they have now in caring for their loved one. And we have a class that and a manual that can help you set up a class in your hospital that will address these needs of those family members and let them have some support. Next steps is a course based on the principles of self-management, and it teaches the participant to be active, an active participant in their recovery and how they are the most important piece to recovering. Gives them some skills and communication skills, goal-setting skills to help them achieve what they want and get to the place where they want to be, acknowledging their new normal. On the next two columns, you're going to see connecting with others and resources. And these are online resources. We do have a web-based community for trauma survivors. And in this community, we have survivor stories. And it's one place where we like to keep updating these stories. People tell their story. They have some pictures. They give some words of wisdom and encouragement to the next person who is going to be embarking on this journey. We have stories from friends and family who tell their part, what it was like to get the call and to care for their loved one and how their lives had changed. There's also a community forum where people can post stories, ask for advice, and support other people. So this is a way, if they don't have a place to go in their community, that we've tried to provide an online support opportunity for those folks. Now, some of the resources that we have available can be used by survivors. The newest resource is the first one that's listed, which is the recovery assessment. And this is a questionnaire designed for those recovering from traumatic injury, and it's meant to help them understand their strengths, the resources they have available to them, and then maybe identify some potential problems so they can be addressed with their clinical team. There's a Traumapedia, which is a collection of information on traumatic injury and recovery that they can refer to online, and a patient and family handbook. This is a very comprehensive handbook that can be customized to your trauma center. And in there's information about day-to-day, what to expect in the day after trauma or the weeks after trauma, but also practical information about your trauma center that you can insert into this book. And you can, after you're finished customizing this book, you can upload it to our website where you would have a space if you become a part of our TSN team. Or you can have this printed and handed out to the people who are in your trauma center. Again, this is just an overview, but and this is what Peter was talking a little bit about. It is modular, and you can take pieces of this and use this at your trauma center, which really leads us into the next section of this, which is implementing the TSN. Implementing the TSN is going to be different based on your resources. In the next few slides, you'll see that implementation can occur at the level in line with the resources that you have available. As an ATS member, you have the ability to become a TSN, be on our team, and become part of the TSN community. And in that, you can have basic implementation, which really means that you will receive space on our website. You can put information about your trauma center. You can list resources that trauma survivors might find of interest or helpful. They can participate in the community forum. They can get a patient and family handbook if you go ahead and customize it. So, and it really requires minimal staff support at that level. And all of you can do that. There is full implementation, and this does require someone working on this really, if not part-time, full-time, where you can do everything under this TSN umbrella. You can do peer visitation, you can do support groups, you can do family classes. You can be out in the community, doing presentations for providers. So there's a lot that can happen there, and those are the two ends of the spectrum. There's a lot in between. And I'm working with centers who are able to do a handbook, but maybe nothing else. Or maybe a group is doing, a trauma center is doing peer visitation, but they haven't quite got to support groups yet. So there are a lot of intermediate levels, and we are more than willing to work with you to figure out where you're at and how we can make these programs reach the patients that you serve. Identifying your level of effort is going to be important. Figuring out what you have available, what you can dedicate, how many people might be able to work together and become a team and kind of share this responsibility. Peer mentoring is a large part of the Survivors Network, and peer groups and peer visitation does provide a really safe space for survivors to connect and learn from each other. It can take place face-to-face. We do obviously have some online community forums and social media platforms for people, but I think our end goal is to help each one of you find a way to create this face-to-face peer support at your center. As a participating facility, you will receive full access to the TSN website. This is not of any additional cost. This is because you are a member of the ATS. You will receive downloadable materials such as how-to manuals, templates for the patient and family handbook, forum access. You will get networking opportunities with other coordinators so you can brainstorm and help each other try to work through some of the barriers that you may be up against. There are resources, technical assistance, PR and marketing materials. We would like to highlight your participation and highlight your success stories in a quarterly newsletter and other TSN publications. And you will have the opportunity to put any offerings, any information you have from your trauma center that you want your survivors to know on the website so they can find that and hopefully use that. Now, based on your level of implementation, hospitals are asked to maintain your ATS institutional membership and obtain institutional approval for commitment, which means that we'll send you a document and we do, need it signed. And that means that we're in agreement that we are going to be working together. We would ask that you designate a TSN coordinator as a point of contact. Again, this may be one person who I stay in contact with or Harry stays in contact with, and we can relay information through that person to other people or the team of people who are all working together to achieve this goal. Be active participants in the TSN. The person who would be the point of contact ideally would be able to check their email daily. That would be something that would be useful for a TSN coordinator. We'd ask that you promote the TSN to patients and families within your facility, and if you can, if you have the ability and resources to recruit peer mentors for your programs. We'd like that you would provide us frequent feedback on how things are going so we can help or provide more support, occasionally assist with out-of-hospital peer referrals. And this would be if you have an active peer visitation program going. Sometimes we get requests from providers or survivors who are looking to talk to somebody else. And we like to use people who have been through the hospital volunteer program. And please consider, if you're a part of this, sharing your resources with others. I have a group of amazing coordinators who work on this project. We all work together, and we all share our materials so that the next person hopefully has an easier time of getting this up and going and doesn't have to recreate the wheel. The next couple slides, you're going to see the promotional material that will be available to you. There are print guides online. Your facility will be responsible for printing any of the promotional materials that you're looking for. We can recommend printers, and I've worked with a couple of centers, so I have an idea about how the prices on some of this printing. You'll see here we have a consumer brochure. We have cards that can be put in there. You can go ahead and put your logo on these and then print them out. We also have a provider brochure which can help you encourage others to promote the TSN with you. The next slide, you're going to see a poster that you can customize. And there are lots of different ones, but you can go ahead and customize it. You can write some stuff on there, put your logo on, you print these out, and you can put these over your trauma center to help encourage people to be a part of the TSN. We also have some online resources for your hospitals. There are lots of manuals and slides that you can download. So once you're a part of our community, you'll have a login. You can go onto the website, and then you're going to be able to go ahead and go through some slides. We have presentations. We have videos. And these are all designed to help you implement the TSN. On this slide, you're going to see some information about second trauma. There are video introductions. There are handbooks for next steps, which will be up there, and handbooks for training peer mentors. So the entire training is done for you. We have a trainer's manual, we have a trainee manual, and lots of us who have done this, who can help you through that process and make it as smooth as possible. You'll also receive coaching, which means, well, talking with me on a basis that you and I decide is regular. And I also have a wonderful team of people who we can call on and help problem solve. If I don't have an answer, if I haven't gone through it, I probably know another coordinator who has. The other pieces, there's an entire implementation guide online, and here are some more posters that are available for customization. So there's a lot to choose from. And then the next slide you'll see is an older one, but we will make sure you get a quarterly newsletter called TSN Notes, and we like to feature a coordinator and a survivor and have contact information, other resources that maybe are new or updates that are available to you, and survivors that you have. The last part of my presentation is just going to be about online resources that are available for families and patients now. So if you sign up and become a part of our team, these are going to be resources that are available immediately to your community. The handbook for patients and families, as I was alluding to before, is customizable. So you can take this, you can insert your own trauma center information, you can print it, you can upload it, and offer it to the folks who are, you know, this is all new, and this can be very helpful in navigating some of this, you know, some of this world, this new world for them. The next immediately available online tool is the community forum for patients and families. They can share experiences, they can provide support and hope to one another. This is a monitored forum. I monitor personally this forum, and so once somebody becomes a member, they can go ahead and write their story, and then we have other survivors who go in there and provide support to the people who are telling their story and maybe looking for support or looking for some answers. Again, a nice way if they can't make it in to see a group or if there isn't a group near them. I think it's the second, well, the next resource that is available is the recovery assessment, and this is new. It's just a really phenomenal tool that is available to you. It's designed to identify strengths and target areas of improvement for recovery-oriented care. So someone is going to go ahead, they're going to go on to the recovery assessment. There are somewhere near 40 questions on there that deal with the topics of depression, PTSD, resilience, you know, their ability to deal with this change and bounce back, the resources that they have, how confident are they that they will be able to find the support they need to overcome these issues and recover, you know, financial issues, social support. And then once they're done with this recovery assessment, it'll have a one-page printout of their results. And it's this fantastic conversation point. So you look at this and you can start talking about how are they, you know, how is the survivor doing, and what is it that the team could start providing for them to help with some of the areas that maybe look like they could use a little support in. And the TSN can provide some of those support areas. If you have a chance, I highly recommend you go on and take a look at the recovery assessment. Right now at the sites we're working with, many of them are using this in the clinic between the 4 and 8 week mark after discharge. The next resource that's immediately available online is the Traumapedia, where they are going to collect all of this information about traumatic injury and recovery and put it in one place. So if someone has some questions, they can go on there and have to look all over. They can look in the Traumapedia and get some answers. And if we don't have it, we'll put it in there. The last and final resource that's available to survivors is Next Steps. And this is a class based on the principles of self-management. It uses scientifically proven methods to increase a patient's self-confidence and sense of empowerment. This class it's 6 weeks long, and it was only available in person when I had first started. And now this class has been moved online. So anybody can take it anywhere. There's a psychologist who is facilitating this course. We have one going with patients as we speak, and this is free to patients that you have at your trauma center. All we have to do is refer them on here. We'll get them in a course, and they can participate in this really phenomenal program. I'm going to hand it over to Ian in a moment. My final piece that I wanted to say is we have received some letters of support for this program, and I, in addition to what Peter and Clay have already said, wanted to just read you a little bit about this, you know, people's experiences and how it has made a difference in their lives. One patient writes, "The TSN has changed my life and helped in my progress more than I could express into words. I didn't have much support for up to a year after my injury until I heard about the TSN. I started to go to the groups, hearing other people's stories about struggles and what they were going through, and feeling the understanding of each other in the group has changed my life. I would not be at this place now if it weren't for the TSN and the resources that were provided for other survivors. Another person wrote, when a health crisis happens, it becomes mentally, emotionally, and financially overwhelming. The pressure, anxiety, and scope of change can only be understood and felt by others who have experienced the same. Despite today's technology and online resources, nothing will ever replace the heart and spirit and soul of another person going through a traumatic situation. It's the human touch and the up-close interactions of meeting people that gives family and friends peace of mind, knowing that they can confront the situation at hand. Finally, a multiple gunshot trauma survivor wrote this about being at one of the support groups. Most of the people in attendance were victims of drunk driving or motor vehicle crashes, construction accidents, or falls, but what I found was a very welcoming group of non-judgmental and caring individuals. These people whose lives had been disrupted, derailed by a traumatic experience was exactly what I needed. Many of these people I now call friends. By being a part of the TSN, I can speak to new trauma survivors. I can relate with them, maybe not fully, but maybe more so than their caregivers. I know what they have been through. I know the emotions, the joys of making progress and healing, and the depression that often comes from setbacks. I can share my difficulties and my successes and perhaps offer hope that there can be life after trauma. Today and for the future, I do have to manage occasional pains and discomfort because of the surgery. I will always have reminders of what I've suffered through. I believe I could not have healed mentally without my fellow survivors. They don't have to imagine. They know exactly what I've been through. This is why I do this work, and this is why I am here and encourage all of you to think about how maybe there's one thing that you can bring to your trauma center that might help other people in this journey. With that, I'm going to hand it over to Ian.
Thank you very much, Liz. We hope by now you've had the opportunity to see how the TSN is and can be an integral part of the continuum of care for your trauma patients. The program is a really terrific opportunity to demonstrate your commitment to trauma patients by supporting their recovery and improving their lives. However, let me not shy away from the fact that this program does require a commitment from the interested facility, a commitment of the trauma staff that work with trauma patients, of the administration to create a unique structure to foster the support of the recovery of these patients. Today was an opportunity for us to introduce TSN to you, the reason for its creation, the importance of focusing on a unique aspect of trauma patient recovery, many of the program's key components, and the benefits for patients and hospitals. We will be sending around to the folks on the phone additional materials to expand on some of the items discussed over the past 40 minutes. We'd like to continue this dialogue with you to gauge your interest in participating in the TSN. We kindly ask that you contact either Liz, our National TSN Coordinator, or myself with any questions after today's webinar. We'd like you to talk with your staff and the administration to see if this program is right for your facility and for your patients. Should you decide to participate, you'll be linked up with our TSN coordinator to assist you in the implementation, as we discussed earlier. This is not a program that ships you materials and lets you navigate on your own. We have a formal implementation process to assist you in this process that will take the time to answer your questions and suggest ways to incorporate aspects of the program. Additional webinars will be planned this fall to orient participating or interested centers on specific components of the program. Again, I'd like to thank you very much for your attention today. My email is on the screen. Our additional email address for the TSN program is admin@traumasurvivorsnetwork.org. Please take a moment now, if you have any, to submit your questions using the control panel, either by raising your hand or entering them into the question box, and we will take them accordingly. The first question we have is, are there any trauma survivor networks established in Canada? At the moment, our trauma survivors networks that are actively functioning are currently in the United States. If there are Canadian organizations on the phone and would be interested in participating, please feel free to reach out to us, and we'd be happy to work with you on instituting a program like this in your facility. Our second question is a cost to fully implement with a coordinator. Liz, can I pass that to you?
Of course. So in terms of a cost to fully implement with a coordinator, you need to think about you really need to think about having someone in your center. Depending on how large your center is, this could be a part-time person, this could be a full-time person. The cost is going to be the FTE or the part-time person, and the benefits that are going to be involved with having them on your staff. In terms of programmatic costs, it is low. There may be some printing costs. The handbooks, for example, for like 3,000 handbooks, you're going to be looking at, I don't know, $8,000. So there are some costs there. It's obviously going to depend on how big your center is, but it's going to be more for the person because it's the personal contact that person has with those trauma survivors and running the groups and planning that and the phone calls, and that's really where the time is going to go.
Thank you, Liz. And another question for you, will a coordinator be responsible for training peer visitors?
Your center will be responsible for training peer visitors. So I am happy to work with the coordinator. If the coordinator is more of a liaison between me and the center, and there is a designated person there who, for example, maybe you already have one of the trauma centers I'm working with already has a SOAR program for burns, and so getting them to train peer visitors is different than maybe a center that doesn't have something already up and running. We can make that decision as we go.
And Liz, can you tell us if you can explain who is really best suited to be a point of contact or a coordinator in a facility?
I think that the best suited person is going to be someone who, honestly, it's someone who's there 5 days a week. It's somebody who is working with the patients. It's somebody who can take the time to answer a phone call or can email somebody back. It could be somebody who is, I work with nurses, I work with physical therapists, I work with health educators, I work with social workers, I work with counselors. So it's somebody who has that touch and can understand what a survivor and their family is going to need and is able to provide the safe space for healing. I would say it's more about the person than the clinical role of that person necessarily.
Thank you, Liz. Our next question is, do you have the data to assist in presentation to hospital administration to aid in convincing them to support participation? Our organization and our staff here has a number of materials that we can provide to you for either your administration or your clinical staff to orient them to specific components of the program, to detail some of the points discussed today about what's involved in starting a TSN interfacility, how do you get started, and how do you orient your staff to refer patients and work with patients that are trauma survivors. I would encourage you to please feel free to reach out to us, and we can provide you that information accordingly. Liz, are there any special qualifications? I know you sort of touched on who the best coordinator would be. Are there special qualifications of a coordinator?
Special qualifications of a coordinator are going to be someone who is flexible. I have a feeling that I'm trying to be asked if this is supposed to be a nurse or a social worker, but really it's somebody who can be flexible. It's somebody who can educate. It's somebody who can coordinate, who can train. There's a lot that is involved there. My personal background is I was actually a teacher for quite a few years, and I have a master's in community health education. Again, we do have, if what you're looking for is a job description for a TSN coordinator, we do have that and can offer that to you if that's something you're looking for. And so I know I'm not giving something very specific, but I hope that that's a little bit helpful.
You spoke of a formalized implementation with the TSN coordinator. Liz, can you discuss approximately how long it takes to implement or train staff to build the TSN program into your hospital?
Yeah, sure. That can take some time. So it depends on whether you have someone full-time or not. And if you don't, it's going to take some time to implement these programs. For example, the Patient and Family Handbook, if you're going to go ahead and customize it, it's going to take some time to be approved through your educational services before that can be distributed to family members. It's going to take a lot of meetings to get people familiar with the program, get them to understand what it is that you're trying to promote. So you could be looking at people who've done this full-time. They have had full implementation in, I would say, less than 6 months. But for folks who are doing this in addition to other responsibilities, it can take longer than that. But we would prefer you do it well than do it quickly.
Our next question, Liz, is are there any materials or programs specific to children?
Oh, you know what? We do not have programs specific to children here.
And our next question comes from Lene Williams. Is a full-time TSN coordinator necessary for basic implementation?
No, it is not at all needed for basic implementation. And I'd actually thank you for that question. There really is a spectrum here, and many centers have started without a full-time coordinator, without even a part-time coordinator. And having somebody or a team of people who can work together and take on this responsibility, you absolutely can do basic implementation.
Are there any other questions from the group? You can, again, please feel free to submit them through the box on your control panel, or raise your hand, which is one of the buttons on your control panel. Well, again, I want to take this opportunity to thank everybody on the phone today for spending your Friday afternoon with us so we could orient you and introduce you to this really important program. We hope that you've felt that we've provided you as much information as you need to continue the dialogue about building this program into your facility. We are here as a resource and would be happy to answer additional questions or send you additional materials if you'd like to see them. Again, please feel free to reach out to myself, Ian Weston. The email is on the screen, or Liz Wasaki. Our email is admin@traumasurvivorsnetwork.org. Or you can call the office at 800-556-7890. Again, thanks very much for your time, and enjoy your Fridays, and have a pleasant weekend.